It's 4 p.m, nearly the end of the workday. You just sent an email. You got a little bit of work to do, but your brain is saying, hey, why don't you go and have a little snack? Chocolate, Oreo, biscuit, crisps, nuts. The world's your oyster. The kitchen's your oyster. Next thing you know, you're in the kitchen and you're looking for your favorite snack. But God damn it, you were meant to stop junk food this week. That was me pretty recently, actually. I got into the habit of every day at 4 p.m, I would just crave something sweet or a snack. For no reason at all. I wouldn't be hungry. I'd go into the kitchen and I'd open the cupboard and there we go, end of story really. But being able to stop it now. In this video I want to share with you how I was able to stop the 4 p.m. junk food craving and any bad habit around eating junk food. And if you understand the brain, you can understand your behavior. And if you can understand your behavior, you can change your behavior. My name is Niam and over the last 4 years I lost 50 kg in body weight, and I'm pretty interested in the brain and human behavior and the mind. And so with that understanding, we can create positive behavior change in our lives. So if you like what you see, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. But for now, let's get into it. Let's just zoom out a little bit and talk about what a habit really is. Dr. Joe Dispenza, a best-selling author and a world-leading researcher of neuroscience, describes a habit as a set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions acquired through repetition. What this means is, these are thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that are programmed into your brain, that you kind of perform or you do without really thinking about it. Now, they're pretty important because they make us more efficient, because those repetitive things that we do every single day, like brushing your teeth or driving a car or even just walking down the stairs, if you had to think consciously about that, it would probably take you a lot of time. Imagine if you had to go into a car, every single time was like the first time that you drove, so you'd have to think, oh yeah, this is when I'm going to put the clutch down, this is when I'm going to move the gear stick, and it would be pretty tiring afterwards as well, because you'd be using all this conscious energy just thinking, how am I going to bloody drive the car? And so they're pretty important and they're pretty useful. However, only when the habit that is being formed is a positive habit. Now, if we form negative habits, we can probably run into a lot of issues, because think about it. We're doing this every single day. We're doing it without thinking about it. So every time we do it, that behavior is, or that thought loop or that behavior loop is reinforced. And so the longer that we perform a negative habit, the longer that we eat more junk food, the longer that we smoke, the longer that we drink alcohol, the longer that we do these habits that have a long-term negative impact on our life, the more ingrained in it gets in our brain, and the more we will do these negative habits without thinking about them. And so the greater the negative effect they're going to have over a long time horizon. Imagine if you smoke every single day until you're 50 years old. Right now you might not see the impact of it, but eventually you probably will. Your lungs will suffer. Same with eating junk food. Same with going to sleep really late and looking at your phone before you go to bed. And so that's why it's so important to figure out what your habits are that don't serve you, that don't have a critical purpose in your life, and find a way to stop them, which is what I'm going to talk about next. Alright, so here's the story with junk food. Junk food triggers the reward circuits in our brain. What this means is that whenever we eat junk food, our brain lights up, being like, yay, we want more of it, or we want this again, or eating junk food provides us with pleasure. And your brain remembers that feeling, and so your brain's like, alright, let me tell you to have more of it. And that's why junk food's a little bit addictive. So when you have a chocolate, you probably want some more. Now, when we were hunter-gatherers, this was really useful, because when we had something sweet, it probably wasn't poisonous, and so it had calories in there that we needed to survive. So when we found something sweet, when we were roaming around the fields and looking for food, having that reward circuit light up in our brain was pretty useful, because it told us to have more of it. And that means because we didn't know when our next meal was, it would sustain us for longer, basically. But the issue is, in the modern day, we have unlimited access to junk food. Like, go and walk down the confectionery aisle in Tesco. Like, literally, when next time you go shopping, walk down the confectionery aisle and just look at how much junk food there is. Like, it's actually ridiculous. I go down that aisle and I'm like, wow. And they're bringing out new products every single day. There's Kit Kat cereal now. Anyway, because our brains haven't caught up with the modern day, because the modern day has literally just started 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, our brains still give us this reward pleasure response that when you eat this junk food and it's like, all right, go and eat some more. But that doesn't serve us anymore. And so that's why it's really easy to build negative habits around junk food. It's not your fault, it's just how we're wired. And so it's just important to be aware of that, so that we make sure that we're putting things in place to try and stop these unhealthy habits from forming, so that in 50 years time, we don't have diabetes and we're not obese, and we can live a healthy, happy life. And that's what I'm going to tell you next. Alright, so when we form a habit, there's basically 3 steps that are caused. It's the cue, the routine, and the reward. Now, when we have junk food at 4 p.m. and we do it repeatedly, our brain now associates the cue of 4 p.m., that time when you send that email, with the reward. And so when we don't eat the junk food, our brain's like, what's going on here? I'm expecting a reward right now. That's the routine. You go into the kitchen, and then the reward is the dopamine hit that you get from the food. Now, when we realize that, oh, damn it, we're having all this junk food at 4 p.m. and we need to stop because, you know, belly's getting a little bit bigger, or we're going on holiday in a few weeks, or whatever reason it is, then it's quite difficult because our brain is now unconsciously associating this 4 p.m. cue with the routine of going into the kitchen and then the reward of eating the junk food, eating that chocolate, eating that biscuit, eating those crisps. And so when we do try and stamp out this habit, yeah, it might work for 1 day, it might work for 2 days, it might work for 3 days. But eventually, because our brain is ultimately doing it unconsciously or subconsciously, we just relapse, and then we end up going back to our old habits of 4 p.m, going into the kitchen, the routine, and then getting the reward of the junk food. And then we look at ourselves like, why do we do that? But it's not your fault, it's your brain's fault. So if you want to stop your junk food eating habits, what you've got to do is understand the cue. What is the trigger? I also have a trigger after dinner every single night. I'm like, I want something sweet. So I go into the kitchen, routine. I go look at the junk food, routine, and reward, eat the junk food. First step is understand what is the trigger for the habit that you want to stop. What is the cue? Now, when you become aware of the cue, when you next time have that cue, when that trigger happens, don't try and go cold turkey, because yeah, it might work for 1 day, it might work for 2 days, it might work for 3 days, but eventually, because it's ingrained in your brain, it's a habit, it's something that you're unconscious of. At some point, when you're not being conscious about it, you'll relapse, you'll go into the kitchen, you'll look for the food, you do the same routine, and you'll have the reward, and then you'll beat yourself up about it, which is not what we want to do. So instead of eradicating the habit, the unhealthy habit completely and going cold turkey, what we're going to do is replace the old habit. So replace the reward with something that's better serves us. So the cue might be 4 p.m. The routine might be going into the kitchen. So instead of having junk food, I could replace that with some berries, which I pretty much do now. Instead of having, you know, some chocolate or some sweets, I'll just go in, have a couple berries, gives me the same reward, job done. Habit that better serves me. I could chew some gum, I could have some Diet Coke, I could just do some breathing, I could go for a walk, I could do some writing, I could message a friend. Basically, the main point is, instead of eradicating the habit, replace the habit with another habit. And so even when you do have that cue, you can still get a similar sense of reward. And so it's going to be a lot easier to stick to than going cold turkey. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you got some value from that. Please hit that like button if you liked it. Hit that subscribe button because there is loads more content to come. Leave us a comment to say hi. Let me know what strategies that you use to kind of break those bad habits around eating or bad habits in general. Let me know if there's any videos that you want to see. Until next time, peace and go get it.